Howdy, this is Mr. Mustachio, and I just felt compelled to go over a few things that I've been noticing popping up regarding Q and all that jazz. For starters, Q and the Anons don't condone violence, nor do they push anyone to commit any sort of violence. It's on every single page. It's not a thing. But you have people trying to say, "Oh yeah, there people died because of Q." No, that's not what happened. Actually, a lot of people will try to point to Christchurch, for example, where the guy posted on poll, separate board. He was live streaming it on Facebook. Why did no one want to take down Facebook? Like, it's just a mass targeting of wherever you can speak freely because they do not want that. They being your overlords in the tech industries and all these horrendous dictatorial government types. And the left. I mean, it's all wrong think. Can't have wrong think now, can we? So it's an obvious frame up. They're trying. I think was it the guy who shot up the synagogue also posted on poll, but again, that's poll. It's not Q research. And at the same time, I don't even think poll condones violence. They might. I don't pay attention to them. It's a whole separate world, to be honest with you. So then you have the what was it? That Gambino situation where the guy wrote a Q on his hand, and like, didn't Charlie Manson carve a swastika into his forehead or something like that? Were we supposed to think he was actually a Nazi? Was he a Nazi? I never looked into that, but effectively, it's the same thing as David Duke with Trump. It's a forced association. So everyone who's done every bad thing who happened to be a Trump supporter, Trump's not responsible. It's not Trump's doing. Trump didn't call for that sort of stuff. Same with Antifa. Though not everyone on the left is responsible for Antifa's actions or Yvette Falarca's actions or the guy who shot Steve Scalise or all the other attempted murders by the left and all the ones that actually went through. Like, then you have the Jussie Smollett thing, Are we supposed to believe that those two Ugandan brothers or wherever they were from, were we really supposed to believe that they really did support Trump and they did it in his name? We saw them buy the hats. Yeah, because it's a secret club to get a MAGA hat. Yep, you get a Dakota ring. Works for Q. It's amazing. The Q Dakota ring comes with every MAGA hat. If you didn't know, that's not true. It does not come with every MAGA hat. Only your first one. But yeah, so anyone trying to point and say that Q has anything to do with violence, they're lying to you. Straight up. I mean, Q's never pushed it. The Anons are not like, we need to do these things and pushing others to do that. That doesn't happen. But beyond that, there's also trying to tie Q into the people making a buck off of Q. You got Jordan Sather. You got Praying Medic. Serial Brain 2. I don't know if he actually tries to make money or not. You have everyone who was involved in that book. No one's really a fan of theirs. Like, they have their little fan base, but it's more about them than about Q. I mean, it's the difference between a stripper and a prostitute. Prostitute's not going to do anything unless you give them money. Like, they're not going to give you the information or the good information or stuff like that. You need to pay them for the access. It's not what we're supposed to be doing. And then a stripper, just, here it is. If you like it, you can totally throw money at me. I'm not going to complain. But they have nothing to do with Q in the sense that they're not a part of the group. They're not behind Q. They're not representatives of Q. They don't speak for Q. They don't speak for the Anons. They just speak for themselves. Again, you could just go back to anyone who makes a buck using Trump's name. Like, whether they're pro-Trump or anti-Trump, it's still just a hub to make money. I mean, you can call them grifters if you want to, but I mean, you could also just call them entertainers. Look at Alex Jones. Look at CNN. CNN actively lies to people. The Q people who have their own little followings and make a buck or two, they're not necessarily lying. They might be wrong. Don't misunderstand. But Jordan's got his whole hippie crystals thing. Buy my organoid. I think Praying Medic will pray for you. But the church, didn't he have himself listed as a church or something like that for a while? I think he had to change it. But either way, I mean, how is that any different? Oh yeah, I need to have a priest come and bless my house. Come on. So all of these things that people try to attack Q over, they might be based on Q in a sense, but only in the sense of like that's a topic that they discuss on their channels. Like a lot of them, they got their start just reading the Q stuff, and it was nice for lazy people or folks who didn't have a lot of time. And then they started working on their own, dig for me, we're going to build this brand up. And, it gets the message out there. And that's all Q really is. Q's just a messenger. I mean, it's not about the messenger. It's about the message. Q's not going to do anything. Trump is going to do everything. Or Barr. Basically just Trump's team. They're the ones who are going to be enacting all this stuff. So take the Day of the Road, for example. That is not suggesting that anyone wants to just jump to martial law and lock everything down. Nobody wants martial law. The only reason martial law would be implemented is if there is an uprising, say when people start getting arrested, not necessarily get hanged, but arrested, like Obama or Biden or Cheney or Bush. I mean, all of them. Anyone on every side, even if they don't officially claim a side, it doesn't matter. Like, there are corrupt, evil, awful people who have been screwing us over for generations, if not millennia. Change my mind. These people suck, and something seems to be being done about it. Now, you're going to have some naysayers saying, oh, nothing's ever going to change. It might become a little bit better. But then this whole thing was pointless if nothing changes. Like, all of it was pointless. And I'm not talking about just Q. I'm talking about, like, the whole electing Trump. Because if all we did was buy ourselves a few more years, a little extra time before, back to being ground, that was the point. So then if you ask, do I believe Q? Do I believe in Q? Well, believe in the notion, the idea. The point is we want change, and you can either be a part of this movement that's more or less one giant psychological operation, changing people's minds. Orange Man, not so bad, you don't even have to love Trump to be into Q. You don't have to be into Q to love Trump. It really doesn't matter. But attacking people and going after them because of some blanket notion you got after the actions of a few, and by that I just mean people trying to make a buck. I mean, I've had people take my designs and LQA's designs. I don't really care. Honestly, I usually offer to help them. But, I'm not in this to make money off of Q. I'm not ever really doing much Q content when you get right down to it. Like, even the videos I did, like, a year ago? Like, those were all based on Q as a jumping off point. Q said, hey, here's the thing. And then your dig expands, and then you talk about the findings. You're not supposed to just focus on Q and, like, oh my God, the whole Q sent me thing that gets obnoxious. Like, even if Q didn't send anyone anywhere, it wasn't even like Q pointed something out, people just say Q sent me. Or they troll and say Q sent them, and it's like, stop lying. Like, it's just all the liars, effectively. Like Alex Jones, he said he's super into Q now, but I thought he knew who Q was and had Q call into a show or something. Just around and around and around, people trying to stay relevant or get followers. It's all it is. And the Anons more or less really don't care because there's all that drama. But if we cared about that drama, then we wouldn't be so into researching, which is the point. Oh, and calling everyone boomers while trying to save the boomers, you can't. You should really pick one. I guess it's not like the Chans aren't full of boomers. I mean, if they were, great. I'm sure that some people have been at it long enough, and there's a lot of older nerds. So, but still, who cares what their age is? Yeah, a lot of this is the boomers' fault. Okay, all right, I'll admit it. Boomers could have done more, or done a lot less shitty things, really. But the mess is being cleaned up, and you got Trump as the face of it. You know, but then this gets back to, do I believe in Q? About as much as I believe in Cicada 3301 and the NSA. Like, it's either real or it's not. So far, there's a lot of coincidences that are kind of mathematically highly improbable, if not impossible. And then all the stuff Trump does at his rallies, that like lime green Q that was allowed at the end of the 2018 elections, all the air cues. Come on. The signatures. How is anyone getting this access? I mean, was Q a leak the whole time? But if Q was just a leak, what sense does that make? Because wouldn't they be able to figure out who has that kind of access and foreknowledge? But does it even really matter? Not at this point. No. Because it's either about to happen or we find out that it was all for naught and we're screwed. But it really doesn't look like we're about to be screwed. It really, really doesn't. It looks like justice will finally be served correctly for the first time in any of our lives. Let's be honest. Hillary shouldn't have gotten away with what she did. Comey, Strzok, Brennan, Page, again, Cheney, Bush, Obama's, all of them. Like the Rothschilds, Soros, Jimmy Savile, across the pond. You know, the Chinese. Their entire government needs to stop being mafiosos. Like it really is a clown world. Clown world run by intel and mafia. The intel's just another form of mafia. Like we need to get out of that cycle. Especially for all these people who believe that we really are the only sentient species in all of existence outside of winged people and dead folks. Like, if we really were the only thing in existence, why are we doing everything in our power to get rid of as many of us as possible? That doesn't make sense. And we've been doing it for a really long time, and it's time to stop, which is the point of Q. It's an ARG. What's the point of it? Disclosure. That's all it is. It's a disclosure ARG. And it's fun. And I just happen to get the references. So it's a community of people who want to talk about conspiracy theorists or conspiracies, and especially ones that aren't theories anymore. It's a vetting process. Like you could call it the Q fact checker service if you wanted to. But I mean, don't wait on Q to do something. It's the Anons who do the things. It's the Trump team that will do the things. I mean, does anyone even remember Khashoggi? Yeah, he was working for Washington Post, but he was a spy for not Turkey. Where was he a spy for? Something like that. Like that's why you never really hear about him ever again, because everyone figured out who he was. I mean, he worked for Ali bin Talal at one point. You know, the same guy who paid for Barack Obama to go to Harvard and owned the Mandalay Bay, in Las Vegas. I mean, it's all the same people over and over and over again. He's the guy who was what Ali bin Talal was a big stockholder in Twitter and Instagram and all that jazz. You know, he needs to be brought to justice. But then people will say, "Oh, but he was released," and I think Dennis Hastert was released, and Anthony Weiner were also released. Optics, though, you still have to maintain the facade for all the normies. You know, forget about boomers. I'm talking normies of all ages. You have to have all of it. Sorry, I got thrown off. No, I'm not streaming on more than one thing. But yeah, those are the main thoughts. Don't attribute stuff to Q that's not actually Q's doing, because then you're just trying to build up a straw man to attack, and you're no better than CNN or the entirety of everyone involved in the Russia hoax. There's no reason to lie, especially if you can make money doing so, because then you're just the exact same grifter. You're harassing everyone else for being like, who cares which direction you're going in it? Yo, you want to take Q down? Oh, you want to build Q up? Why don't you just let Q do Q and people can do their own thing? Oh, and you can't give money to Q. That's not actually a thing. You cannot. There's no where to send your checks, care of Q team or something like that. Like that. Anyone who tells you that people are sending all their Social Security checks to Q, they're lying to you again. I don't know how much they send to people like Praying Medic or Warhammer or Beans. Is Beans still a thing? Like, no one really pays attention to them. I mean, iPod, okay, that guy is entertaining. But, you know, it's about the delivery. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, you don't have to talk. You don't have to be in any way even talking about Q to discuss the topics that Q discusses. But at this point, Q's discussed pretty much everything. So no matter what you talk about, if it's not mainstream, everyone's just going to accuse you of being one of those Q jards. Okay. I mean, if you've ever worn a MAGA hat, you're used to it by now. They're going to say a lot of crap. Because don't forget, Trump is a racist, xenophobic bigot who hates the Islams and wants the Jews to rule Russia, and China is our best. It's so dumb. So think for yourself. Yeah, I like Q. I'm not going to lie. It's my favorite ARG. And it seems to be having a real world effect. And the point is to just wake people up. So that way, when everything does go down, you don't have a lot of clueless people. Does it need to be anything more? Anyway, trust the plan, do a Q, where we go when we go all. Praise CAC.